So do yourself a favor, check out the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club, and don't forget not just to rate it, but also to subscribe on YouTube or Facebook.
All right then. Welcome to the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club presents Jack Sholder with 31 IMDb credits to his name, 24 as a director, included A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and The Hidden, 5 as an editor, one of those was The Burning, 2 as a writer. So please all welcome to the show this absolute top bloke and a bit of a cult movie legend, Jack Sholder. Welcome to the show, mate.
Well, nice to be here. There are actually three scripts that I had produced.
All right.
There's one
It didn't
called
have that.
Where Are the Children, which I didn't direct.
Right, it's not up there on IMDb, so I didn't
Oh,
see that. So I do
really?
apologize.
It's not? I thought it was. Well, anyway, yeah, it was a
So,
film I did with starred Jill Clayburgh.
all right, great actress.
Yeah.
Um, so it all starts really. Your first cinematic feature, Alone in the Dark, 1982. Few dangerous and delusional mental patients break out of a mental asylum during a power blackout and lay siege to their new doctor's house, who they believe killed their previous doctor. And it's an excellent little film. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. It doesn't seem to be all that well known, but it's kind of well, I wrote it and directed it, and it's also my first feature,
You did.
so it has a particular place of affection. Plus it had an amazing cast, and there are moments in there that I think are as good as anything I've ever done. I think like the very ending, that scene with Jack Palance in the
Yes.
club with the girl, I thought was just really one of the best things I've done. I love that scene.
I mean, it's an excellent film. And again, the amount of actors in there who were just big names and who would still go on to make some great stuff in the future as well. I mean, what was it like working with Martin Landau and Jack Palance and Donald Pleasance and
Well, it was a little intimidating for,
first time
what,
director?
well, first time feature director. I
Yeah,
mean, I had directed shorts. I worked with one really good actor. Her name was Beatrice Straight in a short that I did called The Garden Party, which you can actually find on YouTube. Completely different from everything else I've
yeah,
done, but basically I sort of refer to it as the director I thought I would be rather than the one that I actually became, a little sort of genre noirish film about a young girl sort of coming of age in a sense. And Beatrice Straight, actually, she was a great Broadway actress, and she actually went on to win an Academy Award. She was in Network. I don't know whether you've
right.
seen
Great
Network.
film.
Great
Yeah,
movie.
great film. Yeah,
And she was uh, William Holden William Holden's wife, and she was in two scenes. One scene was a big scene, and she got an Academy Award for that. So I had experience working with a really good actor, but I was very intimidated by Donald Pleasance, who I thought was one of the great character actors in the world. And I was, he was probably the one that I was most excited about working with. So I was kind of intimidated to work with him, but he can't, uh, English actors, the experiences that I've had with English or British actors is they view it as a job.
mm,
I mean, it's more than a job, but they come to it, if you hired a plumber to come to your house to fix your toilet, they would come and they'd show up and they'd do the work, they'd collect their money and they'd leave. And that's kind of, my experience. There's not at least the ones that I've worked with, there was very little bullshit. Some American
yeah.
actors make a big deal about it. So he was, he basically I I met him, a half an hour before we shot his first scene, and we ran through the scene. My mind went completely blank. I had no idea what I just watched, and so I said, "Gee, that was great, Donald. Let's do it one more time." And then the second time I was able to kind of focus, and then I asked him to make a little adjustment, and he actually did it. He actually listened to me. So, and what I've since worked with a lot of really great actors, but I mean, when you work with really good actors, it's like driving a Ferrari.
Yeah.
You touch the wheel and it goes around the curve. You don't need to struggle at all. You know.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
So so that was great. Landau was extremely nice guy, and in fact, he and I stayed friends, and he was kind of a mentor to me in my next few films as I was sort of figuring out how to be effective with
Yeah.
actors, which I was really for me I found to be the hardest part of directing, even though I had done some theater work and I'd worked with actors, but still, I felt like I didn't fully understand. It's pretty complicated, because they're complicated human beings. Um, and then Palance was very intimidating, and I. The producer came up to me the day before he was going to start shooting and said, "Oh, he's really pissed off because he signed up to do the movie, and then he got this TV series where he was supposed to go to Florence to shoot, and so he wanted to back out, and then New Line threatened to sue him if he backed out. So he was not happy to be there, and he actually punched the producer the day
Oh,
before. So I kind of had a panic attack. Sort
well,
of,
yeah. Would it be your first feature and one of the stars is punching your producer?
yeah. So I really kind of panicked, that he was going to show up the next day. And, finally I just, I kind of psyched myself up and I said, "You're the fucking director. Nobody's going to give you shit. You're the fucking director. I'm not taking any shit from this guy." So, I came in the next day and that was my attitude that I was not going to let him intimidate me. And he
Yeah.
tried to intimidate me and he didn't. I kind of held my ground. And it ended up, I mean, he was not the easiest guy to work with, but he was great. And I learned a lot from him
Yeah.
and actually working with him. It, uh, I've worked with actors who seem like they're nice and they're really assholes. He was the guy who seemed like an asshole, but he was really nice.
Yeah.
And
He's really a
he
sweet guy down there.
and he understood that I was a first time director, and he would sometimes give me a hard time, but he would sort of, it would almost be like a lesson. Um, I and and there were a few times where it was a very difficult shoot. There wasn't enough money, and it was a low budget, and everybody was working one category above what they were qualified to do. And there was one night that I was having a really, really hard time, and I was completely exhausted, and I was just like running on fumes at that point. And and uh, and he sort of sensed that, and he did something very nice to sort of reassure me.
Yeah.
And then he would kind of do it, and then he'd kind of like turn and walk away. you know.
'Cause did he was there a scene where he refused to kill
Yes. Yeah, that was the first day. I mean, uh, we had two scenes with him scheduled. One was that long walk and talk where he talks to the Dwight Schultz
yeah,
character to Dr. Potter and says, "None of us are crazy. We're just on vacation." It was a long monologue, and And when I first met him, he said, "Look, nobody told me I was doing this scene. I have trouble memorizing dialogue. I can't do that scene today. Sorry." And I said, and then he said, "Oh, and the scene that we're doing tonight, where we steal the car and I kill the guy, I don't want to kill the guy. I really don't believe in violence." So that was so the two scenes we were supposed to shoot, he wasn't. He told me he wasn't going to do so. So at that point, okay. So I said, look, the dialogue scene, we have to shoot the dialogue scene. That's it. This is our only chance. That's it. We have to shoot the scene today. We'll do it the last thing in the day. If we have to break it up into little pieces, we'll do that. If you want cue cards, we'll do cue cards, whatever you need, but we have to do the scene. And as far as the scene tonight, let's shoot the scene in the afternoon, and then we can go back to that. And so, it was like a one long take scene with a long dolly shot, about a page. It was a fair amount of
Yeah.
dialogue. And we did the first take, and it blew me away. And then I said, let's do one more. The second one was equally as good, if not better.
Yeah.
I don't know which take I used, and I said, I said, Jack, that was fantastic. And he looked at me and said, you're full of shit, and walked away. Which was his way
You're
of saying,
full of shit.
and I realized, because a very experienced director said, well, all actors are nervous, they're unsure of themselves. And it was the first scene. And with this, shitty little movie with a little company that nobody ever heard of called New Line Cinema, and a first-time director, he was a little nervous. And so he got this scene out of the way, and he nailed the character. I mean, I had written the scene. I thought it was a good scene. And he just, he like took it and knocked it out of the park. So it was his way of, he said, you're full of shit. It was his way of saying thank you, you know.
And
And then we met again. We took a dinner break. It's what's called a split day, where you shoot
yeah,
half the day in the daytime and half the day at night. So you have this little hiatus where you can take a break and you can set up for the night scene. And so I said, okay. So, and the next time we met, he was nicer, and he was an opera fan. He liked opera, and I know a little bit about opera. I'm not an expert, but I know a lot about classical music, and so we talked a little bit about that. And I said, okay, so now the scene tonight. He said, well, I don't want to kill the guy. I I said, well, Jack, it's in the script. He said, well, why? I said, well, we have to know that you're capable of murder, that your character's capable of murder. And he looked at me, and you know what he looks like. He looked me straight in the
yeah.
eye, and he said, they'll know. And he was right. He didn't have to kill anybody to show you who he was. It
Yeah.
was one of the great lessons that I learned about making film. You know, you don't need to
And
explain everything.
you were working with the right tools in your toolbox, so to speak.
Yeah. So anyway, and then it went pretty well after that. He was great. I mean, I think he gives a phenomenal performance in the film.
Oh, I mean, they all do.
Yeah.
Um, how was it working with Erland Van Lith? I think that's how you say it. Because he was
Well,
only in
Erlen,
really for me.
yeah. Well, Erlen was a really interesting guy. I mean, he was a huge human being.
Yeah,
I I remember when I first met him, I shook hands with him, and my hand just disappeared into his hand. He was. Uh, I think he was like a standby on the Olympic wrestling team. Um, he would go into a gym, and they have those weight machines, and he'd like put lift all the weight on every machine, the entire
yeah,
hundreds and hundreds of pounds. He just lift the whole thing. And in addition, he had gone to MIT. He was a very, very intelligent guy. and he was playing a dimwit, you know. So so the problem was for him to to I mean, he
Yeah,
looked great. He didn't, he didn't have much experience as an actor. He had done a couple of films, but it was mostly because of the way he looked. So we had to work to get him to be convincingly dim. And I think that he did a good job. I mean, there's a certain kind of sweetness about his character, uh, which is a lot like him. He was a
yeah. I
wonderful
mean,
guy. He unfortunately died, and he was also an opera singer. I heard him sing "The Barber of Seville," and he was the barber. He was great.
yeah. Well, he
Wonderful
done a bit of
guy.
opera singing in Running Man. He done a bit of his singing in
Yeah,
there, which
yeah,
was nice to see.
yeah,
Um, and every film he'd been in was a big hit as well.
yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, I think he died in his 40s or something. I mean, very sad to hear that.
Very sad,
But I
definitely.
guess he was such a big guy. He was carrying so much weight, and I don't know, I don't know. But he was a very very interesting human being.
And they say, I mean, it was the first feature film produced by New Line, and people say it's the studio Freddy built, but really it's the studio Jack Sholder built because you were their first film.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Probably Bob Shea would argue with that, but he would. But he was hard pressed to give me a compliment. But he did hire me to do 3 movies, so that's as much of a compliment as one could hope for.
Well, yeah, that's it. And is it right Matthew Broderick auditioned for the role of Bunky's boyfriend? I'd read somewhere.
Actually, yes, that's true. Matthew Broderick came in to read for the role, and he was so good that I didn't cast him because I felt it was like he basically comes in to have sex with the babysitter and then is killed,
Yeah,
it was like the horror film trope, if you have sex with somebody, you die. That's it,
that's it.
And and honestly, I felt bad about casting him because he was so good. Um, and actually, the guy that I cast went on to be um, a somewhat successful actor, a working actor, but he also was a playwright and a very
Right.
successful playwright. Keith, Keith. Anyway, yeah,
It seems like whoever you were going to cast in that role was going to become famous somehow and do very well in the future.
and the girl who played Binky, the babysitter, she actually went on to sell real estate in New York, which is kind of perfect. You know, uh, she was uh, she was she was not a really great actress, but she was pretty. She's willing to bare her breasts on camera. And I I I I remember working with her, and she played the scene, and I wasn't happy with it. So I gave her a direction, and she did it again. It was exactly the same. So I sort of gave her the opposite direction, and she did it again. It was exactly the same. So it was like,
You couldn't win on that one.
yeah,
And is it right that Bob Shea came up with the idea for the bleeder?
yes, yeah, that was his idea. Yeah. Um, I'm not sure whether it was specifically the bleeder, or whether it was the idea that there was one character who you wouldn't see who had some secret. And then I kind of took the idea. I'm uh, honestly at this point, I mean, that was almost 50 years, 40 some years ago.
Yeah, it
So
wasn't.
I don't exactly remember, but yes, that was definitely his his contribution.
And you kind of is it right? You cut your horror teeth on the burning. That was the kind of first horror
Uh,
thing you edited.
he, excuse me, I didn't hear the question.
You cut your horror teeth on the burning because you edited
Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah, yes, because I really was not a fan of horror. Wasn't really my my interest. Um, I mean, I don't especially like horror films just as a genre.
Right.
Uh, I like good films, and there are some horror films that are really good films, so I like them. But
Yeah.
but but there are an awful lot of horror films that are just utter garbage that people love that I have no interest in.
I'm
And
probably one of those people who love them because I am a bit of a horror fan and I do like a lot of shite, I must admit.
well, yeah, one of the great things about doing horror films is there's a huge fan base that's very, very loyal. And I've I've gone to some conventions and things, and I've done some screenings, and it's great. It's great to meet people who are really, real
Yeah.
fans. I mean, I don't know whether rom-coms have or comedies have a so it probably, but I mean, horror fans are kind of special. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I got hired by Harvey Weinstein to direct to edit the movie. I mean, I came in for an interview, and I left, and they said we're hiring you. So I don't know, but I'd gotten an Emmy for some other work I did not, and the fact is, I was a really good editor. I was really,
Right.
really good at it. I just it was just one of those things where I just had, it just clicked, and I just had a talent for it.
Well, they do say good editors can become good directors, and you're certainly a good director.
Well, David Lean, for one.
Yeah, that's
Um,
it. So,
Robert Wise cut Citizen Kane, you know. So, uh, but yeah, so I learned a lot about how the genre worked, how to build suspense. It's like
yeah.
it's like taffy. The longer you stretch it, the more interesting it is. Uh, and that's what I learned from editing the film. If you've seen the film, there's this scene where the kids are on a raft, and or the kids are
Yes,
in a raft, and there's this lone empty canoe in the middle of the lake. Uh,
that's right.
and so of course nobody in the audience would ever think that there might be anything bad in this canoe on the lake that the kids are, in a horror film in a summer camp. Anyway, so they shot a lot of stuff, and I edited it together, and I thought it was pretty good. And Harvey said it's too short. Make it longer. This whole anticipation.
Yeah.
So I made it longer. And Harvey said, it's still too short. I said, well, I've used all the good footage. He said, use everything that's there. So I went back, and I used everything that was usable and made it longer. And the longer I made it, the better it got, you know.
Oh,
Uh,
it's a great scene.
yeah, and Hitchcock talks about suspense and surprise. Hitchcock has sort of been my teacher. There's a great book, Truffaut interviews Hitchcock. It's called Hitchcock Truffaut. And Truffaut was a real film fanatic. He saw thousands and thousands of movies. I mean, Scorsese's kind of like that too, and Tarantino's another, walking film encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And he discusses with Hitchcock every single one of his films, and in the course of those conversations, basically you learn you get all these great pearls of wisdom about how film works. And so he talks about suspense and surprise. So, and the, what he says is, with surprise, two people sit down to have lunch, and a bomb explodes under the table. That's surprise. Suspense, someone puts a bomb under the table, two people sit down to have lunch. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
And so, which is better? Well, I mean, surprise is good, but suspense is better in a way because it lasts longer. You build and build and build. I mean, there's a point at which, the taffy kind of falls apart. But if you can stretch it out, really, really wide. So like with Alone, so I wrote Alone in the Dark. New Line couldn't get it made. So I went off, I edited The Burning. Then I came back and I said, I've got to rework this script with the stuff that I've learned. And I actually put in the scene with the babysitter and Martin Landau under the bed with the knife. Uh, and uh, and when I edited it, um, the head of production from New Line, she looked at the scene and she said, "This scene doesn't make any sense. If there's somebody under the bed with a knife, she'd jump off and run out of the room. Why does she stay on the bed?" I said, "Well, because if she jumps off the bed and runs out of the room, there's no scene." And I did try to stage it in a way so that the knife is in front of her and keeps pushing her back so that there's a rationale.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people who did these kind of horror films, these low budget horror films, had no idea how to tell a good story. So, they would say, well, we want to do, have this happen. So they would just make it happen without any logic to
Yeah.
it, or any reason. I mean, I once did a podcast where they asked directors to watch a horror film and then they come and ask you questions about it. So they asked me to watch this film called Sleepaway Camp. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
was
Yeah.
it was the stupidest, I mean, anything that was in any way good or interesting was kind of a mistake on the part of the director. I mean, it was just that bad. Uh, but anyway, so I kept her on the bed as long as I could, and that was this, and then of course when we screened it, that was the scene that got the best response from the audience. So so there you go.
And then your next film, 1985, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Teenage boy is haunted in his dreams by a deceased child murderer, Freddy Krueger, who is out to possess him in order to continue his reign of terror in the real world. Now, everybody who watches this will have seen Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And that opening scene is still great today as it was when I first saw it.
Oh, with the bus, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, really good.
it still looks fantastic. And I seen this, I was 11 when I first seen
Mm.
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Well, I mean, when you watch it, it's if you were doing that scene today, it would look a whole lot better. But just because of huge advances in special effects.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can sort of tell that it's done with miniatures and stuff like that. But I mean, I think that's part of the charm. I mean, it was very well done.
Oh, it's
Um,
excellent.
and by the way, for you and for your fans, you know that Warner Brothers went back and redid all of the Nightmare films, went back to the original negatives and put them into 4K, and went to the original mixes and put them into Dolby Atmos. And they had me come out and supervise the work that they've done
Oh,
or
that's good.
approve it. So the picture looks great. Um, uh, but the soundtrack, we originally mixed it in mono because New Line didn't want to pay for stereo.
Yeah,
And now it's in Dolby Atmos, and they they also went back and covered all the effects with new effects,
right.
which they have to do for a foreign version, because with a foreign version they have to submit a track called an M&E, called a music and effects track, which has
Yeah,
all the sound minus, so they can just go in and dub in the sound in whatever language,
yeah.
the dialogue in whatever language. So they have to go back, and it's not just like a door slam or so. It's
No,
everything. It's the atmosphere. There's subtle clothing rustle, and there are all of these little tiny things that you wouldn't even think of that are what makes it feel real. And so the original mix was pretty good. It was pretty good. But what we had were what were called three stems. So there was one that had the mixed dialogue, which is mixed and leveled up and equalized and all that.
Yeah.
And then there was one that had all the sound effects, which were mixed together, and one that had all the music. But the music, and so if you wanted to pick out a particular effect and make this sound a little, make this door squeak louder or softer, or well, you couldn't make it softer, but if you wanted to make it louder,
Yeah.
you could go into the effects that they had put in for this M&E track, where they had basically recreated that sound, and then you could pull that sound up. So, for instance, in the opening scene there, uh, when they're racing through the desert, one of the things that we wanted to do was to give the bus this slightly demonic character. So it we mixed into the sounds of the revving of the bus animal sounds.
Right.
Uh, and so we were able to just sweeten them a little bit more. I mean,
Yeah.
if you listen to it, you wouldn't say, "Wow, that sounds different than what I remember." It sounds the same, but it's better. you know. Um, and there were lots of areas where we could, pull something out because um, anything that you saw that was an optical track. So the optical track is not bad, but it's all kind of like this. At Dolby Atmos does this, and you can
Yeah.
hear everything distinctly. Particularly, there were a lot of things in the music track, I mean, that were there, but you couldn't really hear them because they're all mushed together. With Dolby Atmos, the sound, the music, you can hear all of the different things in great detail. Um,
Because that the 4K is due out soon, isn't it? And
it's due out, I think October the 6th, or I don't know, in a couple of weeks. Like I know that I'm doing some interviews next week
yeah.
for
And
with
is
for
it
Warner
right
Brothers.
that New Line originally didn't ask Robert Englund to return as Freddy, and we're just going to use a random stuntman?
Well, they asked him, and then
Right.
his agent said that he wanted more money. And New Line said, "We're not giving him more money. He doesn't." And so, as you may know, Wes was supposed to direct it, but
Yeah.
Wes never liked the script. It wasn't his script. I mean, the original Nightmare on Elm Street was his baby. I mean, that was
Yeah.
he was an auteur, and that was his work. I mean, he wasn't just trying to make an easy buck or, become a film director so he could, sleep with his, starlets or whatever. He was really expressing himself. And so for him to do the sequel with a script he didn't write, where it broke one of the cardinal rules of his script, which is that Freddy only comes out when you're asleep, and
Yeah.
and basically, New Line wanted to cash in on the success of the first one. And at that point, sequels didn't make as much money as originals. Sequels were
No.
just a way of squeezing a little more money out of it. It's not like now where the budget becomes bigger and they expect the film is going to make more money because everybody wants to see the sequel. Uh, and so the script was written by somebody who worked in the distribution department for New Line. I mean New Line had been just a distribution company,
Yeah.
and so Wes, he had a lot of other things going at that point, and so he bailed 6 weeks before they were going to start shooting, and it was a firm start date. So I got hired, and basically, the train was going down the track pretty
Yeah.
fast. Uh, so, uh, I was living in New York. Suddenly, I'm out in Hollywood, and uh, you know, um, they'd already hired the director of photography, who was the guy who shot the first one, who I was very happy to have, by the way. He
Yeah.
was, uh, and they'd hired production guys. They just started building the sets. I mean, it was basically the same houses in the first movie, so uh, there weren't too many surprises. And I said, "Well, is Robert coming back to play Freddy?" And they said his agent wants more money, and we don't want to give him any more money. So I said, "Well, I think he's kind of important to get him back. He's really good." And they said, "No, we can just get somebody and dress him up in that outfit, put the makeup on him, and they'll be fine." I mean, because it, it's not like in a lot of other horror films, where the guy shows up with a chainsaw or an axe or something and kills people and disappears. Freddy's a character. He's got
He is.
dialogue. He's
Yeah.
he's a real character, and you need a good actor to do that, Uh, and so I keep asking, and finally they were able to make a deal with him a few weeks before we were going to start shooting. And so I was thrilled that he was going to be back because he was such a good actor. Um, and later on, I actually I thought about it, and I thought, what they were doing, they're probably planning to hire him back anyway, but they wanted to play hardball, so they wanted to say, no, we're not going to, and they hope that he would cave in finally, and they would be able to
Yeah.
negotiate something that where New Line didn't feel they were being taken advantage of, because they didn't realize how important the character of Freddy was. So, and I actually asked Sarah Risher, who was the head of production, uh, a few years ago. I was having lunch with her, and I said, you know, I've been thinking about this, and I said, well, you were planning to hire him all along, right? And she said, no, we really thought we could just get anybody and stick them in the outfit and they'd be fine. And so uh, once we screened two, whenever Freddy came on screen, the audience went crazy.
Yeah.
And they realized and then after that, there was no question. It had to be Robert. He was it.
Oh, well, I mean, the wisecracking and all that, it can only be done by that one man.
Yeah. And he's a fantastic actor.
Yes.
Um, there's an interview that he did a couple of months ago for a French podcast called Jump Scare. And it's
Right.
all, I don't know whether you know about that one, but
No.
uh, the interview's all in English. I mean, there's a little bit of introduction that's in French. Uh, but Robert gives the whole interview in English, and
Right.
it's
I'll have a
over
look
an
for it.
hour, and it barely talks about Elm Street. It talks about when he
Right.
was a little kid and how he fell in love with movies and how he got into theater and all the other stuff that he did. And it's a really, really good interview. If you have any interest in
I'll have a
in
look for that.
Robert, you might want to check it out. Anyway, like I said, it's called Jump Scare.
And is it right that you kind of cracked up laughing at the love scene in the pool house and somebody else had to direct it?
Well, what happened was um, th we had two teams doing the special effects makeup. So there was one team. New Line didn't like Freddy's makeup in the first movie, so they wanted to hire somebody else. And so I ended up hiring Kevin Yeager because I like Kevin because he wasn't just a gore guy. He was actually a sculptor. He'd gone to art
Yeah.
school, you know. And so he became responsible for the Freddy makeup, and in fact, then went on and did
Yeah.
all the films. And I mean, he was really good. Um, and then there was another team that was more like the Fangoria kind of kids, and they did a lot of the gore stuff. So like the whole transformation scene, they did that. When Freddy comes out of
And it
Jesse.
all stands up still
Yeah.
today when you look
No,
at
it's
it.
good. It's good. Well, I mean, and being an editor, I understood how you get all these little pieces and you put them together and it looks like something that never
Yeah.
quite happened, if you get all the pieces right. So uh and so anyway, the team that did the those special effects, the not Kevin Yeager team. The
Yeah.
first the first effect they did, I sat around for 2 hours waiting. And when you're on a movie set, you really, part of my
Time is
job
money.
is to shoot, what's on the schedule. And if somebody else, if they take 2 hours, that's 2 hours that I've lost. That
Yeah.
that maybe I have to drop a few. I can't quite shoot it the way I want. I have to make some compromises in order. So I was pissed off. So I said, look, the next time you guys do an effect, I want you to wait for me. I don't want to wait for you. So the next thing that they did was this thing where Mark Patton has this huge green tongue that comes out of his mouth. And I had to be rigged. They have all these wires and
Yeah.
everything that make it move around, and you have to be very specific about how you're going to shoot it, because like, are you going to shoot it from this side or from that side? Because we have to have these wires and we have to hide them somewhere, so we need to know, and all the rest of that. Anyway, so they took me seriously, and they got Mark ready ahead of time. We were scheduled to shoot at like maybe 8 o'clock or something. So they were ready at 6, and they have this tongue that's stuck in his mouth, and it's all, wired in.
Yeah.
He can't talk. He can't really, I guess he could drink with a straw. He can't talk. He can't eat. And then we were running late. We were running behind. And so at one point there was a break in the action, and the assistant director said, Mark's in his trailer and he's got this thing stuck in his mouth for the last 3 or 4 hours, and he's really unhappy. And maybe you could go and see him and reassure him. So I said, sure, okay. So I go and I open up the door to his trailer, and he's sitting there with this big green tongue that's like 6 inches long sticking out of his mouth, and I burst out laughing. It was late at night. I was getting a little punchy anyway. So I burst out laughing, and then he had like a pad and he wrote down, "It's not funny." And so I apologized, and I left. So when it came time to shoot the scene, by now it was midnight. He'd had this thing in his mouth for like 6 hours. And I was getting really kind of tired. And, I mean, when you do horror films, you shoot a lot at night.
Yeah.
And even if you're shooting during the day, you know, uh, at least in America, a movie set, it's a 12-hour day. And if you're the director, it's more, because you got to prep for the next, and so on and so forth. And so I was really tired, and I was afraid that if when he came out that I was gonna crack up again. And I figured if I cracked up again, he was just gonna like pull the thing out of his mouth, and that would be the end of it. So I stood on the other side of a door, and I told the assistant director what to do. I said, have him do this and I didn't even want to say action, because I was afraid if I started to open my mouth to say something, I would burst out laughing. So I pointed to her
Yeah.
and say
That,
action.
that that's brilliant. And now I've got obviously Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I've got to mention it. The whole erotic thing. I've got to say, as an 11-year-old, when I first saw it, I didn't spot it. I never spotted it until it was kind of, oh, this is a homoerotic film. This is a gay film. All the rest of it. Until then, I'd never spotted it.
Well, nobody's, the film came out on a Friday, and there were a bunch of reviews. The trades, the Variety, the Hollywood Reporter, the New York Times, all of the papers, and actually got pretty good. Like, I mean, for a sequel to a horror film, it
Yeah.
actually got pretty good reviews. Um, and nobody brought that up. Nobody. and and then on Wednesday, there's an alternate paper called the Village Voice, very famous alternate uh, paper. And the Village Voice said, this is the gayest horror film ever made, or something along those lines. And Sarah, the head of production, called me up and she said, "Did you see the review in the Village Voice?" I said, "No," and she read it to me, and we thought it was hysterical because it was so
Yeah,
ridiculous, you know. Um, and and then basically the film made a lot of money. It did New Line was hoping, the head of distribution said if we can do 80% of what the original did, we'll be pretty happy. And it did more, you know.
because everybody wanted more Freddy because the first was
Yeah,
such a good
everybody
film
yeah, I
and he was
mean,
such a good character.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't, look, I did a good job with it. I don't feel the sense of ownership with Elm Street that I feel with Alone in the Dark, which I
No,
wrote and directed, that
yeah,
came out of me, or with The Hidden, even though I didn't write it, I felt like this was like the perfect movie for me, you know. Um, Elm Street, uh, you know, if you're directing a movie, you have to somehow find a way to fall in love with it. You have to
yeah.
believe that it's the greatest thing there is, and that you can give it 110%, which is what I did. And I think I did a very good job. I think it's a well-made film.
Oh, it's a fantastic sequel. It isn't a really well made film, and it still
Um,
stands up today. Watching it just yesterday.
but so after the film came out, Monday morning, I was back in my little apartment in New York City, and the head of my agency calls, who had never spoken to me, never deigned to speak to me, and said, Dino De Laurentiis is going to call you from his car in 5 minutes, when nobody had a phone in their car.
Yeah,
And at that moment, I realized that my life had changed. And so, I really didn't look back. I was like, on to the next one,
and that next one is 1987, The Hidden. Absolutely fantastic film. Um, and is it right that it's the favorite of your films that you've made?
I, I would say so. I mean, I have a few favorites. 1201 is a real favorite of mine. By Dawn's Early Light is a real favorite of mine. I think those are probably my three best. The last film I made, 12 Days of Terror, which actually is it's about a famous series of shark attacks. It's not a horror
It's
film.
what Jaws was based on.
Yeah, it was a story that Jaws was based on.
Yeah,
Um, but when I go back and watch um, The Hidden, there's so much of me in it, and um, in 2005, I took a job to start a film program at a university, and I'd never taken a film course in my life, so I really didn't know what I was doing, but I kind of, you know, I knew how to make films.
yeah,
I had to figure, but I never like studied it. I mean, I studied it, but I never
yeah,
like went to school to study it. First, you're filmmaking one and then filmmaking two and
yeah,
editing one. And, I never learned that. So I kind of had to figure out what the rules were. So I could teach it to the students. First, you have to know this, and then and once you know this, then you can learn this, and so on and so forth. Um, and when I would at some point there was a screening somewhere that I went out for. I think it was in Denver, and I remember seeing the film. I did everything right. Everything that I've been telling my students. I'd done everything correctly. That I had a background as an editor. I also
yeah.
had a background as a writer, so I really understood story. and I understood character. And so there were lots, so there were, um, with Elm Street, I shot the script and I understood the script as best I could, and I shot it as best I could. But with The Hidden, I I I understood the script in a deep personal way. It's just a sense of humor and just the whole feel. When I read the script, I said, I have to make this film. This is the film that I've
Oh,
been
it's an excellent body
the
horror.
film that I've been waiting to make. So in that sense, it's my favorite, even though I didn't write it. I actually did some rewriting on it because the original
Yeah,
writer basically wanted to direct it, and when he found out he couldn't direct it, he basically just left. And there were some changes I wanted to make to the script, and so I made them myself. And I don't want to take any credit. It's a fantastic script, written by very, very good writer Jim Calf. But there were just some things that I did. I added the little girl. She wasn't in the script, um,
right.
because I felt
His
that,
daughter.
yeah, that it was needed for character reasons I was trying to accomplish. So,
Yeah.
and so in that sense, yeah, it is. It is the one that they can put on my tombstone.
Oh, it's fantastic. And which Sidney Lumet films or Lumet, I don't know how you pronounce it
Uh,
properly. Um,
Sidney
did
Lumet.
how many? Which ones inspired you? Because I believe,
Well, Sidney Lumet did a number of New York City. I mean, he was a New York City director.
yeah,
All of his great films take place in New York, and he lived in New York. He was born and grew up in the Lower East Side and all the rest of that. Uh, and I mean, all of his cop films were impeccable. Um, I mean, not a wrong note. So, Dog Day Afternoon, uh, Prince of the City, all of those, Serpico. Um,
yeah,
so I love those films, and I directed some shorts. The Garden Party, which, I have a few friends who think that's the best thing I ever did. Um, I'm I don't think it's the best thing I ever did, but I think it's really good, and there are parts of it that are
yeah.
some of
I'll
some
I'll check it out on YouTube. I'll have a look for it.
yeah, have a look. It's completely different from all my other films.
Yeah.
Uh, but having made films and having, been dissatisfied with this or with that, and then looking at those films, everything was impeccable.
Mm,
Everything was perfectly done. So uh I so I in my mind, I'm not sure that I said that, I've kind of said this afterwards, but it was basically a Sidney Lumet film, with cop film with aliens. And the irony is that after it was done, and everybody loved the film. I mean, New Line thought it was going to be a huge success because we tested the film, and it had a huge, very, very high approval rating from the test audiences.
oh,
It
I
just
think
it
this is
just
probably my
never,
favorite of yours.
yeah, it just never, I don't know why, but it just never quite clicked, the way, let's say, Terminator clicked. Uh,
Mm,
but so it got into this. There's a film festival in France called Voriaz, which at that time was the major genre film festival. It disbanded sometime later, but at that time it was one of the top film festivals in France, and definitely the top genre film festival in the world at that point. And the jury consisted, one of the people, the head of the jury was Sidney Lumet. And um, uh, RoboCop was also in competition.
mhm.
And everybody said, "Oh, this is a really boring year because everybody knows that RoboCop's going to win." so there's no suspense. And I ended up winning. Um, and so Sidney Lumet handed me the award for uh, for the movie, which
That must have felt quite good.
it yeah, it was pretty it was pretty nice. I mean, I was also dating this really beautiful woman who I eventually married, and we've been going out for a short time, and I invited her to come to the festival, so it made me look really good to her, you know. Uh, so that was a plus. But somebody interviewed me a few years ago, and he was writing a book about the festival. Um, and so he wanted to interview me about my experience. And so one of the things that and I assumed, because I asked Sydney if I could have lunch with him, because um, when I was living in New York working as a film editor, people in New York are very cynical, jaded, um, and people who work in film, tended to kind of put everybody down, you know. Um, nobody ever nobody ever said a bad word about Sidney Lumet. He was like a god. He would go
Yeah,
in and he would shoot, and he was like the ultimate director. He was no knew everything. He was completely in charge. Nothing fucked up. He expected you to be your very best, and you had to be, and all the rest of that. So, and I had a very hard time with Michael Nouri. He'd
I was
give
gonna
me a,
say I've got that down. That you butted
yeah,
heads with Michael Nouri.
yeah. He had given me a really, really hard time, and I mean, it's kind of odd because in a way it was the hardest film that I've ever done. Because in addition to trying to make the film, I had to deal, like, how am I going to deal with this guy today?
Yeah,
Uh, and the psychological aspect of making a movie, can be extremely taxing. Um, it got a lot better as I got more experience because I kind of understood, you know, what to do and
yeah.
what not to do and what to say and what not to say. But so I had lunch with Sydney, and I picked his brains, and I said, so what do you do when an actor gives you a hard time? And he looked at me and said, nobody's ever given me a hard time. But I mean, he was one of the great directors of actors.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Uh,
He
and
was,
and um, and so I always thought that in a way, the reason that I got the award was that I was kind of the kid. RoboCop was a very successful film, and Paul
yeah.
Verhoeven was a very successful director. And here's this young kid that comes in with this film, and why don't we give it to him and help his career? And so that's always kind of what I thought. So the guy who had written the book, who was writing the book about the Avoriaz Film Festival, um, said that, I interviewed somebody who was on the jury that gave you the award. And he said that Sidney said, What's what of the films that we've seen is the one that really, like, knocked you out of your seat? And they said, you. I mean, me. So
Yeah.
I didn't, so apparently they actually thought that I did have the best film, which was really nice.
And what are your thoughts on the sequel?
Well, they asked me to do the sequel.
Right.
It was going to be for less money. There was no script. Everybody in Hollywood loved The Hidden, so I was getting, a lot of attention.
Yeah. Great film.
And I said, I'm not interested in the sequel. Uh, and one of the producers of the original film was the producer for the sequel. And he hired a guy, very nice guy, wrote a script. I read the script. It was okay. They made I've never seen it.
Right.
Uh,
That's
you
fair
know,
enough.
I kind of know the people, and I read the script, I read the reviews. Uh, I have no interest in spending 100 minutes watching it.
And then, so that takes us to 1989, Renegades. Undercover cop forms an uneasy alliance with a Native American to help him hunt down the criminals who stole an ancient Lakota tribal lance. And I love this. Great action, great pairing, good
Yeah,
chemistry.
I have very mixed feelings about that film. Um, After I did The Hidden, like I said, I was getting a lot of attention. I had my 15 minutes of being hot in Hollywood. And I was, and I would say that I was near the top of the B list, but I wasn't on the A list. So
Yeah,
the thing about being on the A list, it's not just that you get more money or that, A-list actors are more willing to work with you, but you get better scripts. And if you don't have a good script, you're not going to make a great movie. I mean, when I read The Hidden, I said, this is a great script. If I
yeah,
can pull this off, it's going to be a really good movie. Um, and, you know, I was getting offered every horror film in Hollywood, and I had no interest in doing another horror film. And I would try to get an A-list film, and I couldn't quite get over that hurdle. And and so I was starting to really, my 15 minutes of being hot was starting to wane. And I basically at that point I was well, I wasn't married, but I was pretty serious with the woman who would become my wife. And
yeah,
and I had to make another movie, if nothing else to support myself, and uh, my price had gone up quite a bit, and so I couldn't get any of the movies that I really wanted to make. So the Renegade script came along, and it was with people that I knew were the producers. That I really liked and respected and had a very good relationship with. And I thought, well, it's a good action film. It's got a car chase. It's so on and so forth. It's another cop buddy movie. Uh, I know how to do this, and so I signed on. And I thought the script had some issues, and I worked with the writer quite a bit. Uh, been my experience that when the script has issues, and you try to fix them, you know, it's the script that still has issues that are fixed, but
yeah,
still got, the fundamental things wrong with it. I mean, now I find like the whole portrayal of Native Americans is kind of a little embarrassing to me, honestly. And um, some of uh, I think it's a well-made film. I think um, I'm not entirely happy with it. I think some stuff is a little too obvious and a little too slick in a way. And when it actually got pretty good reviews. Again, it got
yeah.
pretty good. But I remember being in a movie theater. So there were some really big movies that came out that summer. I forget what I think there was a Star Wars sequel, and
Batman.
yeah, there were a bunch of really big films, um, including some big cop buddy movies. And I was in a movie theater, in the spring, and they had these trailers coming on, and there was one big studio movie after another, and the audience, for each one, they were just, shouting and clapping, and then up comes uh, the Renegades trailer, and went quiet. Like, they just wasn't that much, it couldn't compete with these other ones. And it came out the same time as, another big movie. They just kind of threw it out there. If they had said, you know what, this movie, if we release it just right, it could do well,
Yeah.
as opposed to, well, let's just, it didn't cost us a lot of money. Let's just throw it out there and see what it does. And so it was a real disappointment. And it kind of, whatever the steam that I had in my career kind of was dissipated. I was very
Yeah.
upset. I called my agent. I said, "Is this going to like ruin my career?" And no, no, you're going to keep working. But then I started doing TV movies. The trajectory that I was on. If that
Yeah.
movie had been a hit, then I would have been set. But
Yeah. I mean, how
so
was working with Keith Sutherland? Because I've heard he could be a bit difficult at
he
times.
he was a real pro.
Oh, right.
Um, he was going through a kind of a difficult time in his life. Um, and he was trying to sort of keep it all together. Um,
Yeah.
and I think as the film went on, I think it got a little harder for him personally to keep it together. So I don't know if he was out drinking or not sleeping much. Uh, but I mean, he was always very professional.
Ah, well, that's all you want, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he showed up, he did the work, he was a good collaborator. Um, Lou was a delight to work with. A very, very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. And
Because obviously they both had good chemistry together because they'd made Young
yeah,
Guns.
well, yeah, that like I mean, basically, it was a sequel to Young Guns. I mean, that was
Yeah.
that was kind of how the trailer. The boys are back in town again. There was
Yeah.
a pop song called "The Boys Are Back in Town" that
I
was
know the song.
popular. Yeah, right. And so that was the idea. So that one just when I look back at it sort of was like the the crest of the curve that had been going up.
Yeah. But I mean, your next film, By Dawn's Early Light, 1990, a non-NATO nuclear missile is fired from Turkey at Russia. It detonates. The Soviet response is automatic, um, and it continues to escalate. Can it be avoided? We follow the US president and a bomber crew. And this is superb. The tension on the screen just oozes off the screen. The whole, just brilliant.
Have you seen Failsafe, the Sidney
No,
Lumet film? Failsafe. There's a Sidney Lumet film that's basically the same story,
right.
where it was based on a novel called Failsafe, best-selling novel, where the Russians, we accidentally bomb the Russians bomb us, and then the president is going to have to decide what to do. The president was played by Henry Fonda.
Yes.
It was all shot in black and white, very stark. Really, another Lumet film. It's really, really good. Um, and I mean, I didn't consciously think of it that way. Uh, at that HBO, HBO was, initially HBO was buying, first run Hollywood movies and showing them before they got to
Yeah.
network television. And then they decided that they needed to start making their own films. So you could only see the film on HBO. And they had approached me a few times, and uh, my agent felt that it wasn't prestigious enough to do a film for them. That it was a step down from doing features.
Yeah.
That features was like, that was what every director aspired to, was to make features. And even though this was a feature for HBO, which was a lot more prestigious than doing a made-for-TV movie. It wasn't prestigious enough. Anyway, so I turned it down a few times, and then I got this script, and the heat was off from after Renegades,
Yeah.
and I remember I was flying to Europe, and I read the script on the plane, and I said, "This is a really good script." Uh, it was also based on a book,
Hmm.
um, and uh, and I thought, this is kind of like a real grown-up movie. It's not a genre film. It's a and HBO would put the money into getting a good cast and all the rest of that. And I thought, yeah, I think this would be a really interesting, challenging, fun thing to do. So I agreed to do it. I don't know why. Uh, with the exception of Elm Street, I always worked on the script with the writer on every film that I've ever done.
Yeah.
It's what one of my agents called directing on the page, because you read the script, and as director you have to say, what is this film really all about? What is the subtext of the film? Citizen Kane is about loss of innocence. Like every character, what happens to Kane is he loses his innocence. The Rosebud is
Yeah.
symbolic of his loss of innocence, et cetera, et cetera. So what's and so then, because if you're going to direct it, you have to understand it in the deepest, most profound way. You have to understand that script. If you walk onto a movie set with a good director, there'll be somebody saying, "Go here, do this, do this." That's usually the assistant director. The director's
Yeah.
usually sitting in a chair looking at the script, because you're trying to tell that story, and and everything that you do you have to know where that story's going and what the moments are and what it's about, not the plot, but what it's deeply about and what each scene is about and why that scene is in the movie and who that scene is really about, and all of these things and then once you understand that, then you can start to really shape it in a way that tells the story. Where do you put the camera? You can put it anywhere. Why put it here instead of here? Because there's
Yeah.
it's not black and white, but there are better choices and less good choices, and hopefully, there's a reason to make the better choice. Um, so so anyway, I worked on the script. I actually worked on the script with the guy who David, not Francisco, David. The next script that he wrote was Gladiator, so he was a good
Right.
writer. Um, and so he and I worked on the script, and then we got this phenomenal cast. I cast Martin Landau again because I wanted to work with him again. Uh, and I had James Earl Jones, who was one of the great actors. Uh, you know, Darren McGavin, Powers Booth was really good. Rebecca De Mornay was, kind of pretty hot
Oh,
at that
the
point.
cast just knocked it out the park.
Yeah. Uh, uh, Rip Torn, phenomenal actor. Totally out of his mind. What a phenomenal actor. Uh, and down to the smallest parts, I had a fantastic cast. Just
No, it is. When what had happened with this film, when I told one of my friends that I was going to be interviewing you, he says you've got to talk about By Dawn's Early Light. It's his best film. So he got us
really
to go out
good.
and find it, and it's a first time watch, and and the tension does it oozes every second of that film. The tension's just there, and it's so good. Really is a really good film.
Yeah. Well, whatever else you might say about my films, they're not boring.
No,
Um, and I mean, a feature script. theoretically is 120 pages, and a figure a page a minute, it's 120 minutes.
Yeah.
Most of this, I don't think I've ever directed a script that was 120 pages. They're usually less. Especially genre films tend to be more like 90 or 100 pages. But uh, directors will do these films, and the first cut of the film will be 3 hours, and 3 hours
Yeah.
long. My first cut will be 90 minutes long, and then I make it longer because I just don't. I like to
You
keep
like to
things
make
moving.
films in that sweet spot.
Yeah, I like I remember what actually when I did which one was it? Uh, oh, it was actually Renegades. Uh, uh, I had the editor was a French woman.
Right.
The guy who edited The Hidden, and he and I really just got along really, really well. Uh, but he wasn't available, so I couldn't hire him to do Renegades. I hired this French woman, and she had worked with a lot of kind of auteurish kind of film
Right.
directors. I think she'd anyway. I I remember she cut this one dialogue scene between Kiefer and Lou, and I watched it, and it was like really slow. And I said, and of course, when you're shooting the film, the editor, as soon as you complete a scene, the editor edits it. It's not like they wait till
Yeah.
everything's done, and they're
No.
so it's all being edited as it's being shot. As soon as the scene is completed, the editor cuts it. So the whole thing is cut together, within a week or two of when you finish shooting.
Yeah.
Uh, And so periodically I would go in just to look at the scenes. I didn't want to look at them too much. I didn't want to do too much work because I didn't want to get too used to them. So when I saw the whole thing put together, I could react to
Yeah.
because it never works when you see the whole thing put together. Sometimes it's like a disaster, and sometimes it doesn't quite work, but it never fully works. And anyway, so I looked at the scene and I said, "Boy, this is really slow." And she said, "Well, when I work with a lot of these auteur directors that I work with, um, they like me to keep in the actors' poses." And I said, "Well, I don't want to see actors posing. To shorten it up, take the posing out." And
Yeah.
then and then I left. I got in my car to drive back, and I realized that it was her French accent. She meant pauses, not poses. So, but anyway,
It's a language thing. So that takes us 1993, 12:01. A man who quite fancies a woman at work sees her get murdered. He gets drunk and zapped at 12:01. The next morning, she's back and everything's exactly the same. Um, and the time loom gives him a chance to save her and get to know her. And it is
yeah,
superb.
that's probably my second favorite. I
Right.
mean,
And it,
uh, um, By Dawn's Early Light is equally good, but there's something about 1201, just the blend of humor, sci-fi. I think the performances are really good. I think that I I remember. I don't watch these movies very often. If there's a
no.
screening or something, um, and I haven't seen it in a long time, sometimes I'll sit through the screening, and uh, I was, I don't know, doing a class or something, and they wanted to screen, one of the, like Elm Street. And I said, why don't you screen 1201? It's a really, really interesting film. And I hadn't seen it in ages. And so I sat through it, and, I watched it for the first 20 minutes. And I thought, no, it's not quite as good as I thought it was. And then it starts to go on. And the more it went on, I said, this is really
Yeah,
good. And the
it
way it
is.
builds, Because the first 20 minutes, it lays out the first day. It's all laid out and everything is, it's fine. But once the day starts to repeat and the complications start to happen and things start to speed up and speed up and speed up, uh, and the relationship starts to grow between the the male and the female leads, it really, really works. Um,
And
Again,
again,
but
great
I think there are
chemistry between
moments that are
Jonathan.
part of it that some of my best stuff.
Oh, it is excellent. I mean, Jonathan Silverman and Helen Slater are fantastic in the leads. And then you've got Jeremy Piven doing a bit of
Yeah,
comedy relief.
yeah,
And Martin Landau is, again, excellent as always, very dependable. Um, and Groundhog Day was released the same year and
right.
it basically uses the exact same premise. Um, was there a bit of a lawsuit or something that went on?
No, no. I mean, what happened was there was a guy who made a student film
Yeah,
called 12, I think it was called 1201 AM. And basically, it was like a 15 or 20-minute film, and it won the Student Academy Award. And it was basically this guy who's like stuck in this loop that never resolves. And it ends with him being just
yeah.
stuck in despair, I think. I don't think I ever actually saw the.
Kurtwood Smith from RoboCop's stars in it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. He was in it, and so New Line hired him to expand it into a feature, and the feature has a very different tone than the short. It's a kind of a. I mean, I've always sort of done these sort of mixed genre films. Uh, so this one was a sci-fi thriller rom-com in a way.
Yeah,
You know, uh, and uh, and it had comedy in it. And all of my films have some comedy. Even By Dawn's Early Light, which is pretty grim, has a few moments of
yeah.
it's got a few small laughs in it. Even there. And uh, Wow, I just completely lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so for me, I it kind of fit my personality well,
Yeah,
and it was also kind of a challenge because you had to understand the logic of how the day repeats. Uh, and there were a lot of choices to make. So like you see the day, and then the clock strikes 12:01, and suddenly everything goes back. And so the next day starts off, and the characters have no idea. It only repeats for this one
yeah,
character, but he has no idea that the day is repeating. And by the next time, he now knows what's going on. And by the next time, he now figures out how to use it. And so how do you shoot that in a way? So do you shoot the second day the same way that you shot the first day, or do you shoot it differently? So there are a lot of these choices to make. So, for instance, I shot the second day very similar to the way I shot the first day. Um, when you then get to the third day, when he's now realizing it, then you start to see the action from a different perspective. But
yeah.
there are an awful lot of things to kind of keep straight because you had to remember what happened, how you did the previous day, and
And
you're not
it
shooting it. You're
works.
not shooting it in chronological order. You shoot all the scenes in this space, you
Yeah,
know, from the beginning, the middle, and the end, and then you go and you shoot all the scenes in that space, and you have to keep track of it all. And I just had a our first son, who did not sleep well at night. And so between that and all of the exhaustion of just making a movie, I was really tired. And so just to keep everything straight, Jonathan was one of the just the nicest actors I've ever worked with, as a lead actor. I mean, he
He
was
always
just,
comes across as a nice guy. I must
he's
admit, in everything I've
incredibly
seen him
nice.
in.
We, I remember we had this, so there's something called turnaround. So, the actors have to have 12 hours or a certain number of hours of turnaround from the time they finish until they start the next day. And if they don't get all that turnaround, then they start getting paid a lot more money
Yeah.
the next day. And we were on a budget. And so sometimes so what happens is you go an hour later. Now the next day you have to start an hour later. So, if you're shooting sort of later in the year, it gets dark sooner and you have like
Yeah.
one less hour to shoot, and it kind of starts to multiply. Anyway, so we went over and one day, and then the next day we had to shoot. There's a little car chase in 1201.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
And we had to shoot that plus another scene. Now, normally, I mean, when I shot the Renegades car chase, I took 5 days to shoot that or something. This had to be shot in half a day, and plus another scene that involves some cars driving around. Um, and now we had to start like 2 hours later, and we were just going to run out of daylight. It was really bad. So we all got So the crew all got there at the regular call time, but we had to wait for 2 hours for the actors to show up. Anyway, I get there. Jonathan's there. I said, hey man, what are you doing here? You're not due here for 2 hours. He said, well, I just thought I would show up. What the hell? I mean, that's the kind of guy he was.
Brilliant acting. He's always good in whatever it is.
Yeah,
Now, jumping
wonderful.
forward 6 years, from there, Wishmaster 2, Evil Never Dies. Sequel to Wishmaster, obviously. Evil Jin is awakened once more and must collect 1,001 souls to begin the apocalypse. You wrote this one as well, didn't you?
Right. So they had offered me the original Wishmaster, and I really wasn't interested at all. Didn't particularly care for the script. Um, Ironically, I had worked with Andy Divoff before. In By Dawn's Early Light, there's the scene where Landau, as the president, gets on a call with the Russian premier.
Yeah.
Um, and he initially gets on a call with like the assistant to the Russian premier. And that voice was Andy Divoff
Right.
because Andy's father was a diplomat, and Andy spoke like 3 or 4 languages fluently, and he spoke Russian fluently. Uh, so uh, so I knew him, and basically things were slowing down. I needed to make a movie. I had to make a movie a year in order to just support my family, you know,
Yeah.
keep everything going. And so my agent called up and said, they're offering you to do Wishmaster. They want to put out a sequel. You can do whatever you want. They don't care. They want to make a movie for this much money called Wishmaster 2. And whatever you want to do, you can do. I mean, within reason, if I wanted to
Yeah.
turn it into a musical comedy, they weren't interested. But, aside from that. So I kind of, I thought, well, the premise is interesting. What if, you could wish for anything you wanted, and what if, you get what you wish for, kind of the basic premise. And so I thought, well, this is possibility. So what are situations where, somebody really wishes for something and it could go wrong? So I thought, well, if you're in prison, I wish I could get out of here. If you're in a casino, I wish I could
Yeah.
win a lot of. And so I kind of concocted this thing. I mean, it's a little bit of a mishmash in a way, but it's very much my sense of humor. And it's also got this odd spirituality since one of the lead characters is a Greek Orthodox priest, a hunky priest, and it's a really kind of an interesting mishmash of ideas. And I really like it, and I think Andy Divoff is fantastic in the film. I mean,
Oh, it's great fun.
boy, did he
And
go through I mean, what he had to go through with the makeup, and they had to put those special lenses in his eyes, and toward the last couple of weeks it was like putting sandpaper in his eyes. I
oh, I
mean, he
could
was in
imagine.
pain. He was in pain, and I actually remember there was one day where he had gotten them out, and I said, "Oh, we have to do this other scene," and then he'd had to put them back in, at the end of the day, and it was. He got a little grumpy, and I mean, you can't blame the guy. It was an ordeal, real ordeal to be in that outfit.
And is it right that Corey Feldman made a cameo in the robbery scene at the start? Or is that just internet bullshit?
Uh,
Because he was dating the main lady, wasn't he?
he's he was the actor who basically sort of crashed and burned. Is that?
Yeah, that's him. That's him.
Yeah, no, he's not in the film. What happened was we showed up at this one location to film, and there were like these condos or something.
Yeah.
And he came out like he saw this film crew there, and he came out. I don't know. He was in a bathrobe or his pajamas or something, and 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 some of the people knew him, and it was a little sad. He was a little out of it, and,
Yeah,
anyway.
nothing's much changed there, I don't think. So from Wishmaster, we'll go to 2000 and the debacle that was Supernova.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't receive a credit on that film, which was fine by me. Walter started it out, and he made a film. I almost got hired to direct it.
Yeah,
I was basically, um, I was the head of, it was done by United Artists. So there was originally it was supposed to be this young Australian director who had done a film called Romper Stomper.
great film.
Yeah, and so he was going to direct it. He was a hot young guy, and he had some difficulties with the script. And at one point, they were building the sets and everything, and he took it upon himself to completely rewrite the script, and then said, "This is the movie I'm going to do." And the studio said, "No, it's not. We don't like your rewrite. We like what we have better." And they parted ways. And so they were looking for another director to take over. And I was one of the people that they brought in. I had a couple of people who were admirers of mine who were working there, who advocated for me, and so I was basically the head of production wanted me to direct the film, and then the head of the MGMUA, the chairman of the whole thing, knew Walter Hill, and Walter, I guess, needed a job, and Walter came in and pitched in, so they hired Walter, and so I was very very disappointed. And in a way, I was kind of relieved. I mean, it would have been the biggest movie that I'd ever done, and I went in and visited the set where they were building, they had a whole big stage, and the whole stage was filled with this huge
Yeah.
spaceship, and it was pretty daunting, to sort of come in and not have a whole lot of time to really prepare. And I also felt the script had some issues. Anyway, so every now and then I would talk to my friend at UA, and hey, how's the film? Oh, it's going great. And then one day I get a call and they said, well, we just fired Walter, and we'd like you to take over the film. And it was in editing. Like Walter, the film was all edited together. There was a track that was already written by the Chemical Brothers, if you know who they are, like an
Yeah.
electronic.
Great band.
Yeah. And they felt that the film had issues, and Walter felt the film had issues, and he wanted and Walter wanted to do some reshoots, and the studio was willing to do some reshoots, but they wanted to test the film first. Walter said,
Yeah.
you cannot test the film because without the reshoots, it's not going to play properly. And the studio said, well, we don't want to spend all this money for reshoots and then find out that there's something that we didn't know about that the audience is reacting to that we also should have done. And we're not
Yeah.
going to go back. And so, do the best you can, and let's screen the film, and let's at least get some information, some feedback from an audience. Walter refused. The studio insisted. Walter said, okay, I'm not coming into the editing room until you agree to do it my way. And Walter, he had done a film for New Line, and he basically done the same thing, and New Line caved. Well, UA,
Right.
after 7 days, they fired him for breach of contract. And I think they were relieved because Walter Walter was trying to make an art film. It was very dark, and very grim. And the spaceship, the entire interior of the spaceship was all kind of the same kind of grayish color. And everybody was kind of wearing these blue or gray uniforms.
Mm.
Uh, and the way that Walter likes to shoot is he likes to use these very long focal length lenses and shoot everything in close-ups. Uh, so, I mean, basically, you could be anywhere in anywhere in the ship, and anybody there, they're in the same background and the same color
Yeah.
outfit, and everybody's sort of talking this really kind of tough language, and there's also like a big scene where they go into hyperspace, and the captain gets fused into this pod, and the assistant captain, who kind of has a murky, dark past, which is James Spader, is the star of the film, has to take over. And there's also this kind of AI machine, I guess, that's running the whole thing, that kind of talks like this, and everything that happens, like
Yeah.
open door, sitting down, like shut the fuck up. You know, it's like it was really just awful. And the music was, during a lot of the slow parts, which was like most of the film, that they played the kind of music that like they play when you're getting a massage and they want you to fall asleep. It was that kind of music. And then when there was action, it sounded like the synthesizer was having a nervous breakdown, and the thing where the captain gets killed and James Spader has to take over the ship and save the ship from getting destroyed an asteroid belt. The computer basically solves everything. It's like bad idea, you know. So we made we made whatever changes Walter had wanted to make, that we could make without having
Yeah.
to reshoot. And with the things that he wanted to reshoot, if we couldn't do it, we would put in like scene missing, spaceship, blah blah, with a little description. Uh, Admittedly, not the best thing. If I were the director, I would have been very unhappy to have them just sort of taking my work and screening it and not giving me a chance. But he had a chance to
Yeah,
do what he
change
could do, and
things.
the studio was willing to screen it on the basis of, well, let's just get some feedback here. Not is this
Yeah,
work? Is this and he didn't take it. He played hardball with him. We screened the film with a test audience, about 100 people. 20 walked out before the film was over.
right.
Uh,
Bloody
or
hell.
I don't know, at least a dozen people walked out before the screening was over. And when we got the score, so like The Hidden got a 92 approval rating, which is very,
Yeah,
the people had done Terminator, said this was the same score the Terminator got. If you're in the 80s, it's okay. If you're in the
yeah.
70s, it's bad. You really got to get at least into the 80s to have any chance. It got a 20,
Oh,
a 20.
that is bad. And it is a bit of a. I watched it this afternoon, and it is a bit of a mess of a film.
It's a mess. It's a total mess. Anyway, so I worked on it, hired two editors, very good editors, and we reworked the whole thing. We tried to, like, any moment where we could find where a character actually
Yeah.
like smiled for a half a second, we
Mhm.
put it in, you know. And we did a test screening and it got like a 70.
Yeah.
Which wasn't good, but compared to a
No, but was
20,
better. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
and the chairman of the board who had hired Walter said, "Jack, you saved the studio. We're going to put your statue in front of MGM." And then uh, about a month later, there was a change of regime. The chairman left. The studio had been bought by Kirk Kerkorian, who owned like a lot of hotels in Las
Yeah.
Vegas, and he installed like one of his top Las Vegas guys who looked like an extra in Goodfellas. He had like these shirts with like these lapels that sort of came down to here,
Yeah.
like and um like Joe Pesci wore in Goodfellas,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
uh, and uh, and they uh, they had a board meeting, and Francis Coppola was on their board, and so and for the guy from Las Vegas, his favorite movie, guess what? His favorite movie was Godfather, right? So so they say, Francis, what are we going to do about it? So Francis says, oh, I saw the film, I can fix it. So and I had convinced UA to throw out the didn't take a lot of convincing to throw out the Chemical Brothers score and to I hired a composer that I'd worked with to write a big symphonic score to make the
Yeah.
film feel like a bigger movie. And I was in a scoring session and I played the trumpet. I was going to be a professional classical musician, but I hadn't played it in a number of years. And so I said to the composer, "How many trumpet parts have you written?" He said, "Three." I said, "Can you write in a fourth part that's pretty easy?" And he said, "Okay." And I started practicing, and I was sitting in, with like some of the best trumpet players in the world, in this A-list Hollywood
Yeah.
orchestra. And I was having just the time of my life, to just sit in with, and I thought that they might be pissed off, like who's this guy? He just decides he wants to sit in, but they were thrilled to have the director sitting in their section, so they treated me very well. And there's a kind of um, a society of brass players. We all play
Yeah.
these instruments that are kind of difficult, so we all have this sort of common understanding. And so,
Yeah.
and I've always felt that with other brass players. And, so we all just hang, and it was great. The second day, we're in the session, and somebody says, Jack, there's a call for you, come into the booth. So I go in the booth, and it's my editor. And he says, did you hear what happened? And I said, no, what? He said, Francis Coppola's taking over the movie. I said, what? He said, yeah, they told me to pack everything up. It was a Thursday. We had booked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the orchestra. He said, well, on a Thursday, he said they wanted me to pack everything up and send it up to Francis's vineyard in Napa Valley. He wants to edit the film there.
Bloody hell.
I said, so I immediately, call up my friend, and I say, is this, he says, well, I was about to call you. So we're in the middle of this lame duck recording session. And in a sense, I mean, I was going to reshoot a new ending. It was putting lipstick on a pig,
Yeah.
It was never, the film was deeply flawed. So how can you make it
Yeah.
less flawed and somewhat palatable? So let's give it a nice big score. Let's put a big slam bang ending on it. Let's see if we can get the
Yeah.
romance between Spader and Angela Bassett to work in some fashion or other. It seemed like they hated each other,
So that moving on from there takes us to 2001. Arachnid, a a scientific expedition investigates an outbreak of an unknown viral epidemic on an island in the South Pacific, and battles with a giant alien spider in the jungle. And it's a cracking creature feature.
Oh,
And
really?
you're working with.
You actually liked it?
I did. I like them. That's the kind of films I dig. A good big monster, giant creature, killing folk, ripping people's heads off. And
Yeah,
it's a fantastic factory film, and I've enjoyed all of their stuff as well.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's like a low B, like
Oh yeah.
C movie. And it's the one movie that I'm really kind of I think it's really a bad movie. But
Oh, it isn't. It's not at all. It's a good creature feature. There's some great practical effects in it. Some decent performances from the actors, and obviously Brian Usner on as producer. And you got to spend 6 months, was it, in Barcelona?
yeah, well, everything was great. I had a movie that I was supposed to be doing. It
Right.
was a thriller movie, and it actually had Steven Seagal in it. God help me. As the villain, not the hero.
Right. Oh, that'll have been a change up at that time for him.
And I thought, I mean, I had been asked to direct a Steven Seagal movie before, and I'd
Right.
actually met with him, and he was kind of at the height of his fame. He was married to I I forget her name. She was
She
some
was in Weird Science. I know you
some
mean. I can't think.
gorgeous Australian
Yeah.
model. Um,
Kelly LeBrock.
Kelly LeBrock, thank you. Who I actually ran into at a film festival. And I said, anyway, so I had a meeting with him for this earlier film. I mean,
Yeah.
I was riding high and he was riding high. And and so Warner Brothers said, well, will you meet with him? He'd like to meet with you, you know, because I thought, I'd heard such awful stories about him. I thought I don't want to, life is too short kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, so they said, well, will you at least meet with him? So I thought, okay, I'll I'll meet with the guy. So I was supposed to meet with him at this restaurant in Beverly Hills that he picked. And so we're supposed to meet at like noon or something. And then the phone would ring and it would be some girl, some woman saying, Stephen is running a little bit late. Could we possibly make it could you be available at 1 o'clock? Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I arrive at this kind of high-end Italian restaurant in Beverly Hills. I walk in, nobody's there. And in the back, there's like a raised area, and Steven Seagal he's like four-walled the entire restaurant. And it's just him and Kelly sitting at a big table in the back, kind of like
Yeah.
Mussolini, like you have to walk across a 50-foot room, or if you see pictures of Putin, he's sitting at a table and the other guy's like 30
Yeah.
feet away. Uh, and uh, and he was being reasonably gracious. And when it came time to order, he ordered my food for me.
Right.
Um, he said, "Get to this, get to this, yeah." And then we started to talk about the script. And at one point, I said, "So I don't think this," he had that ponytail thing happen.
Yes.
So I said, "I don't think this character should have a ponytail. Would you cut off your ponytail for this movie?" And he said, "Well, if I thought it was right for the character, And then I said, "Well, I'm a little bit worried about, whether you would actually let me direct the movie, or whether you would." And he said, "No, I would completely respect what you wanted to do." I said, "Well, you wouldn't even let me order my own fucking lunch." Anyway, so needless to say, it didn't happen. I wasn't interested. Probably
No.
he wasn't. He probably figured out, and if I had, it would have been. I mean, my lawyer, when we were trying to do this next film, my lawyer had just worked with some producers who had done a film with Seagal, and he
Right.
said he is the worst human being I have ever encountered in my life.
I've heard quite a few bad stories
He,
about
um,
him.
yeah, yeah. We were supposed to do this movie, and it had a good budget. It was a good script. It would have been a good movie. I don't know what it would have been like with him, but fortunately, he wasn't that much in it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I thought he would have been really interesting in this role as the bad guy. Um, and um, and he kept like sort of putting us off and putting us off, and finally, um, I had a meeting with him. The meeting was in his house, it was up in one of the canyons. So I go
Yeah.
in so I have this, I'm supposed to meet with him at, 3 o'clock. So I go to his house, and, there's always like this bevy of women who are sort of like his handlers. Stephen is in the middle of a meeting right now, but please come in and sit down. So I'm led into this huge living room, and I'm sitting on this giant sofa, and there's like a Buddhist altar in the room, and on the floor is a Buddhist sand design. It's like a
Yeah. Yeah.
mandala on the floor. And I'm just sitting there, after about 10 minutes, one of the young ladies walks in and says, "Stephen is so sorry, but he'll be with you soon." And I sit there, and a Buddhist monk dressed in, saffron robes enters from the other side of the room and just walks across the room and exits from the other side of the room. And then a few minutes later, another Buddhist monk walks across. They don't look at me. They just, they're
Yeah.
into the thing. And then finally, Stephen will see you now. And I'm led outside, and he's in a meeting with members of his band discussing a
Oh,
tour. And he proceeds to tell me that the script, which he's agreed to do, but he hasn't signed the contract, is a piece of shit,
yeah.
but he knows how to rewrite it.
Oh
And
dear.
yeah, anyway, so that was the end of that. My favorite story, and there's lots of stories. A producer said that he had a script, and he thought Seagal would be really good. Again, I think to play the bad guy, and he was a pretty prominent producer. Anyway,
Yeah.
he has a meeting set up with Seagal. He shows up at Seagal's place, and Seagal himself answers the door, and he seems to be like visibly moved or upset. He looks like maybe he's even been crying or something. And the producer says, is this maybe not a good time to talk?" And the guy says, no, it's okay. He said, is there something going on? And he said,
Yeah.
well, I just read the most wonderful, moving script I've ever read in my life. I wrote it.
Oh. I wrote it. Oh my God. So after Arachnid, it brings us to our final film, 12 Days of Terror, about the 12 days, July 1916, where a shark patrolled the waterways of northern Jersey. And it's based on Richard Ferncolla's account. And I really
Right.
enjoyed it. I watched it this afternoon, found it on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it's a really good film. I'm actually wearing. I don't know if you can see
I can't see it.
you see what it's actually
Oh, yeah,
the the t-shirt from the production company. So we actually ended up shooting it in Cape Town, South Africa. I mean,
right.
it was interesting because it seemed like for the first half of my career, everything I shot was in Los Angeles, and then for the
Yeah,
second half, it seemed like everything I shot was not in Los. Usually, I did a bunch of movies for Fox Television Productions, and we'd usually go to Vancouver, which is very nice. It's a beautiful city. I love shooting in Vancouver. But with this one, they decided that it was too expensive to shoot in Vancouver. So they said, we want to shoot it in Cape Town, South Africa. I said, fine with me. I'd love to go to Cape Town, South Africa. And it was a great experience. I mean, at that point, I kind of figured out how to direct movies, and I figured out how to
yeah,
work with actors. And so when problems arose, I knew how to deal with them. I knew how to conserve my energy. I knew that I didn't have to worry about things that other people were paid to worry about. And I had a really good time. I had a really.
it's a really good little film. I must admit, I really
Yeah,
enjoyed
I
it.
had a great group of people. Had a great, the crews down there were fantastic. They were they do a lot of shooting in Cape Town. I mean, they do a lot of commercials because a lot of European companies go down there because they have, all this beautiful, beautiful
Yeah,
mountains and all, car commercials. And, the crew was, production people were terrific. And it was a great time to be in South Africa. Mandela was the president.
yeah,
Um, Apartheid had fallen. Mandela had kept the country in one piece. I mean, he was, one of the great men of the
oh,
20th century.
completely.
Uh, and, um, you know, they had their issues, but there was just this wonderful feeling being there. And
Yeah,
it's a beautiful place, and the wines, the wine country there is great, and the food was really good, and it just everything about it was good. It was interesting because so the film, the story, this is based on over 12 days uh, in 1916, before the United States entered World War One,
yeah,
um, and sea bathing was now the new thing. I mean, people didn't used to go swimming, but now people were starting to do that, and these communities along the New Jersey shore um, uh, were thriving with tourists. And then over a July the 4th, which is our Independence Day, uh, over the long over 12 days that included July the 4th, there were a series of shark attacks, three of them which were up a river, which is very unusual. And they never fully determined what shark was attacking people, or if it was
Yeah.
one shark or several sharks. The general thinking was it was a bull shark, because bull sharks can live in brackish, can survive in brackish waters,
Yeah.
which is what the river still would have been mildly brackish, but mostly fresh water, which most fish can't survive in. The author of this book, who is a doctor, and who lived in that area and had been fascinated, felt that it was a juvenile great white shark. And the irony is, so Cape Town is a narrow peninsula, and on the Atlantic side is Cape Town, and there's
Yeah.
a little coastal mountain range. And if you go over that mountain range, on the other side, you're in the Indian Ocean. And it's about an hour's drive to get over there. And that's where we shot most of the movie. We stayed in Cape Town, but we shot most of the movie on the other side. And ironically, if you've seen, there's some famous pictures of giant sharks um, breaching the water. Those were shot where we were shooting,
Right.
in those beaches. And in fact, one of the guys on the crew had been a lifeguard on the beach we were shooting, and actually had seen someone attacked by a great white shark. Uh, but also, we were shooting there when it was sort of winter, and it was the rainy season, and most of the film was
Right.
shot outside on these beaches, and so if we'd gotten a lot of rain, it would have been a bad thing. And I had done a film in India with Harvey Keitel, and
Or beeper.
yeah, and so the week before we started the film, the head of production at this film studio, which is, by the way, the largest film studio in the world in India, had said, we're supposed to start shooting on a Monday. And he said, the studio astrologer has determined that the auspicious moment to start your film is at 9:08 on Sunday morning. So we'd like you to show up on the stage at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. So we showed up, and they had a prayer ceremony, and they had the camera with the flowers wreathed around it. And, we, Hindu puja ceremony, and at exactly 9:08 we turned the camera on, and we had a slate and said, scene one, and we ran a few feet of film and turned it off, and then we all broke a coconut for good luck, and we never had a bad day.
Oh well, that must have
which
been
is
lucky.
like, that never happens.
And I've just realised. Sorry, continue there.
Well, anyway, so everything just went right, and that never happens. There's always like bad days. There's good days and bad days.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when we were in Cape Town, we wanted to see where the townships were, So in the area between the two oceans, where it's like hot and dry, was where the black people were, forced into these townships, and had to kind of stay there, and so we were fascinated to see what it was like, and we did hire a tour company that was from that area, so it wasn't like we were just white people, white guys doing kind of looky-loos, although we sort of were. But one of the places that we visited was a Sangoma, which is basically, to put it in crude terms, like a witch doctor, and he had this concrete hut, kind of a bunker, and it was filled from floor to ceiling with dried monkeys and various things and all kinds of herbs. And I mean, it was like the craziest place. And the guy himself, he had this, I don't know if you'd call it a hat. It was like a small animal that like, was about like 9 inches high, a furry thing that he wore on his head. And he kind of talked like this in this really weird, creepy voice. And so I thought, okay. So I said, we're about to start a venture. Do you have anything that would bring us good fortune here? He said, oh, yes, I do. And he said, I have this twig. He picks up a twig and he said, light the twig and inhale the smoke and ask your ancestors for good fortune. And he gives me the twig. I paid like, $1 for the twig. So the night before we started shooting, I said, okay. So I lit the twig, I inhaled the smoke, and I asked my ancestors for good fortune. Well, we're shooting during the raining season. We never lost a day to rain. There were days we would get up, at like 7 in the morning and it was pouring. We drive over the mountain range, it's pouring. We get to the beach where we're shooting, and the rain would stop.
That's fantastic.
Uh,
And last of all, I've forgotten a film, so I'm gonna have to go back. Generation X,
oh yeah, yeah,
1996. The first Fox's first go at the X-Men, in a way,
right. Yes,
and it was supposed to be a pilot for a TV show.
right. Yeah, yeah. It's what they call a backdoor pilot.
Yeah,
So they make it as a movie, um, but they're also trying to sell it they also have a plan that they could make this into a series, which never happened. Um, and yeah, it was we had a very big budget for a TV movie, but a
mm,
minuscule budget for a Marvel comic book movie. And um, I actually really really liked the movie.
I do myself. I've
I thought it
got the
turned out really
VHS.
what?
I've still
Yeah.
got the original VHS,
Oh,
the
really? Yeah.
rental VHS.
Yeah, and we had a really good cast. What's his name?
Finola Hughes,
Yeah,
Matt Frewer
well,
played the villain.
yeah, well, and he was fantastic.
Yeah,
Um, uh, it was the first time where the writer was one of the producers, and
right,
he had written this script, and he did not want anybody to change a word in the script.
right.
And when you're directing a movie, um, one of the things in the contract, in the writer's contract, is there's something called droit moral, which is a French word, which means the moral rights of the author. So if you write a book, the publishing company is not allowed to change a word. Or if you've written a play, they're not
Mm,
allowed to change a word without your permission. When you write a screenplay and you get paid a lot more money than you get paid to write a play or something, you sign away that right.
yeah.
I could take your script and do whatever the fuck I wanted with it, and you couldn't say peep. Okay. Well, in this case, the writer was one of the producers. So, and in the pecking order of things, the producer is above the director. Although, once the movie gets started, there's not a whole lot the producer can
No,
do. And he did not want any of his words changed without his permission. But yeah, what that was the actor's name?
Matt Frewer.
Frewer, yeah.
Yeah,
Frewer was so good. I mean, he was kind of like Jim Carrey. He
Mm.
could improvise, and he was hilarious. He was brilliant, and he could do and he would improvise on the script and say whatever he wanted, and the writer never said a word because uh, uh, Matt was so good. He was a pleasure to work with, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it there was a lot of pressure because it was a very, very tough movie to shoot within that budget
Mm.
and that time frame, you know. But I thought it turned out really, really well, and I'm very, very proud of the work that we did
I
on.
think it's still a great fun film. All the actors really do a great job. Matt Frewer plays an excellent villain. He always is. He'll always be Max Headroom to me, but he always plays a great villain when he's a villain in anything. Did you know the comics at all?
I did not know them at all, and
Right.
and the writer would kind of try to clue me in, educate me on the lore and the do's and the don'ts, which I kind of understood. Um,
Yeah.
but he and I didn't really see eye to eye a lot of the time. He wanted people to just kind of stand there and say his dialogue, and I wanted to keep moving
Right.
people around. You know, it's uh, and so there was a certain amount of tension, and when I was shooting outside, uh, you could get Cuban cigars in Canada, which you couldn't buy in the United States because we were
Yeah.
embargoing Cuba. And so I would buy these Cuban cigars, and if we were shooting outside, I would sometimes smoke a cigar. And there's one point where they were setting something up, and I was outside, and I was looking at how to shoot something, and the writer came over and told me, how I should shoot it. And I said, well, I don't I don't think so. I think I'm going to do it, like
Yeah.
this, and and I think he thought that I blew smoke into his face, and he slapped the cigar out of my mouth. And then I proceeded to chase. He ran away, and I was chasing him. So anyway, life
But
went on.
that really wraps things up. We've
Yeah.
taken a trip right through your career,
Oh,
with some
yeah.
cracking films and one debacle. And it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Jack.
Yeah,
Um,
you're gonna have to cut this way, way down. I mean, this is like nobody wants to hear me talk for two
Trust
hours.
me, I've got them up there for 2 hour long. People like to listen. And it's honest to God, I won't be cutting anything out. It's a pleasure chatting to you. It has been.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I did an interview. I don't do a lot of these
No.
because I've done a bunch of them, and I end up saying the same stuff over and over. And I agreed to do one a few days ago, which I really regretted because the guy just asked me these stupid questions. It was kind of annoying.
Oh
But I
dear.
really enjoyed talking to you. You're you know very knowledgeable, and you ask good questions. So thanks for that. And
No,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you so much for doing it. I really did enjoy chatting
yeah.
with you.
Well, it's a pleasure. So I guess it's about 8 p.m. where you
Yeah,
are.
just after just yeah, 8:15.
Right. Well, you got a few hours before the pubs close, right? So,
Well, I can't walk and I'm stuck in my bedroom.
oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, that's why I do the podcast because I'm kind of stuck in here, and it's to reaching out to chat to people who I admire really.
Uh-huh. Well, thank you, and I'm honored. And you also said that you run a cinema
Yes, I
club.
run a cinema club and I screen films.
Yeah.
We've screened a couple of video nasties for my birthday in October. Then we've got Aliens in November.
Well, I'm, the films that I made were made to be seen on a big screen.
Yes, they are
And
definitely.
that's the way to see them, in a big screen in a dark room. So thank you for keeping the lights out.
Well, Thank you for being here, Jack. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll chat to you again soon. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care.